So this is the second in a series of lunchtime conversations on harnessing the power of your voice, which is part of the work that we've produced at Safer Dance, which has a long title of this Dance School's Safer Working Group. You are most welcome to post questions, and to do this, please write your question in the Q&A box. Don't worry if you forget, and use the chat box. We'll do our best to pick any questions up there as well. Please do keep your questions hypothetical without mentioning names or locations if you can, just to keep everyone safe. And I'm just going to hand over Erin briefly to explain how the Q&A box works.
Hi, everyone. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can find the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen in the center. And you'll see there that if you click on that box, it'll bring up an opportunity for you to to put any questions into the question box. You can also upvote questions. So if you see someone else's question in the box and you really like it, or you want to also see it answered, please feel free to upvote there. If you do have any questions that you put into the chat, I will move those over into the Q&A box as well. Thanks all.
Thank you, Erin. So my name is Imogen Knight, and together with Erin and Laura Nicholson at One Dance UK and some others, we created Safer Dance, and we form also part of the standing committee. And before we start our topic today, I apologise if there's noise in the background. There's a class about to start in the corridor, just along the side. What I'd like to do on behalf of Peter, who's our chair and can't be with us today, I'd like to introduce the overall work of the group. So we formed the group in the summer of 2020, following the exposure of safeguarding criminal investigation in the vocational dance world. This obviously led to a discussion across a number of organisations and associations, and Peter volunteered to form a working group to support the sector to improve understanding of and access to safeguarding resources. We have a core committee of 6 members with a strong combination of education, dance and safeguarding expertise. And we welcome anyone interested in these topics to join, to contribute and to distribute our work, so that our campaign is as broad and as loud as it possibly can be for better safeguarding in dance. Our aim is to support the sector with access to free resources, to challenge the leaders of this sector, and to continue to prioritise safeguarding. And we also want to be a voice to be heard by those who make and enact policy. The committee meets every month to discuss what we hear may be needed in terms of resources or advice. And on top of our day jobs, we spend time sourcing or creating materials which you can now reach on our website. We're not a charity or a company. We're simply a group of people working together to help the dance industry with safeguarding. We now have 76 members from across the UK and beyond, and across the wide variety of dance genres. The members range from CEOs to dance teachers, from psychologists to educators. The website contains a number of resources, 4 of these lunchtime conversations, a long checklist for dance teachers to help them to get safeguarding right, and a short checklist as an aid memoir of the key themes to remember. We've asked the NSPCC to create a document on the new abuse of positions in trust law and how it relates to dance. We've produced a guide for schools who wish to hire a dance teacher, and not dance schools, I mean primary schools or non-dance schools, who may not have expertise in understanding a dance CV, for example. And most recently, we've teamed up with One Dance UK and Paul Stewart, former England footballer, to ensure all dance teachers have access to free online safeguarding training. We are always looking for more ideas and also more members, so please get in touch if you're interested. So, on to our topic for today. Effective use of your voice is a primary teaching skill, and much of the success a dancer achieves is a direct result of how they receive feedback in the practice studio. Beyond that, the atmosphere in class or more widely across your school is influenced by the way the teacher and or leaders communicate at all the touch points, whether the audience is parent, student, colleague, or anyone else who is engaged in your space. I'm sure that we would all agree that there is huge power in words, how we select them and how we use them. For a dance teacher committed to providing a safe space in which every individual can flourish as a dancer and as a person, using our voices effectively to set a good tone, making time and space for different learning needs so that the whole community benefits, how we use our voice is fundamental, but not always easy, and a constant personal growth space. The aim of harnessing the power of your voice lunchtime sessions is to empower you to support your students through your language in the dance studio and the choices on the language that you make. We are used to providing multiple images to describe the same movement to different students, and we are used to making rapid adaptations for physical differentiation or different learning style preferences. However, when someone's emotional or mental health challenges are not visible, or perhaps even well understood by themselves, this can make the world of a difference to their confidence, your confidence, and everyone's success in class. There is also a language around mental health and occasionally a rush to label an experience, which can feel intimidating and impenetrable no matter who you are. We do forget that everyone experiences some sort of mental ill health during their lives. This is a normal thing for all humans. However, for some, this condition is serious, lifelong, and or complex. So today, our focus is on supporting students who are experiencing mental ill health to help you to increase your awareness and confidence in using appropriate language and context, and that which hopefully you can apply immediately into your practice and benefit from. So, to help us tackle this, I am delighted to welcome Nicole, Will, and Maria to share aspects of their work in mental health and well-being in dance and more generally, and how we can work effectively to provide dance environments which allow the individual to harness their strengths, face their challenges, and become flourishing artists. Thank you all in our audience for making time for this important discussion today. I would like to turn first to Nicole Lekka, consultant and honorary senior clinical lecturer in general adult psychiatry. Please could you kindly introduce yourself today, Nicole, and then share your presentation with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Imogen, and One Dance UK for inviting me. Let me just start by sharing my presentation. Okay. Can you see it? Is
Yes, that's
everything
great.
working? Yeah, great. Okay. So, just a minute. I'm not sure. Can you see the yeah, probably, yes, fine. Everything is working on mine as well. So I am Nicole Lekka. I'm a consultant psychiatrist, and I'm also part of the executive committee of the Sports and Exercise Special Interest Group of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And my role there, I'm the aesthetic, sports and dance liaison. I'm also a member of the of IADAMS, of the International Association for Dance Medicine and Science. And there I am part of the mental health work group looking after dancers' health. Today, this is a huge subject. So today I will only offer an outline of many things that could take an hour in themselves to be discussed. I'll start by describing what is good mental health and well-being, a few things about common mental health problems in young people, how we use communication and language, and what can help. So we all talk about mental health. Many times we mean different things, very different things. We somehow confuse mental illness with mental health, maybe because we don't have a standard. What is good mental health and well-being? So the way I understand it is when we can say that somebody's got good mental health if they're satisfied with life, if they have a sense of autonomy, control, and self-realization, if they don't have, for example, depression and loneliness, and when they're able to cope and learn from challenges. Now, in the dance class, usually there are very young people, from children to adolescents. Adolescence is a critical period. Lots and lots of things are changing, and we need to keep in mind things about influencing students' mental health. So, in no particular order, kids who come to class, they may have parental problems, family relationship problems. The parents might be stressed. They may have friendship difficulties for all sorts of reasons. They might be influenced by social media. They may have personality traits that make their life difficult, for example, perfectionism. They may have physical illnesses, and sometimes we may not know about them. And they may have social stressors at home. For example, many people now have got financial difficulties at home, or there is a lot of uncertainty in the family. So how does mental health / mental illness express itself in young people? What do we see? So many times people suffer with stress and anxiety not only as the general anxiety people feel, but also social anxiety, which in class it can become more obvious. They may have depression, they may have poor self-esteem, may have problems with their body image and disordered eating. They may be self-harming, may be self-critical, may have, as I said, perfectionistic traits. And older adolescents, or even younger adolescents, actually, they may be misusing substances. Disordered eating and eating disorders, I'm not going to go into all that. They do impact on physical, mental health, and performance. And there's a range of them, from the invisible ones to the visible ones. Invisible, when I say that, I mean orthorexia, appearing as if people have normal weight, but in effect doing lots with their food. Then we've got dieting, we've got over-exercising or over-dancing, and then we've got the more visible ones. Now, one thing to remember is that most times people come to class with these problems. It's not that dance or coming to dance class is going to create these problems. Students are part of the general population. There is a lot of there are lots of mental health problems in the general population. So a percentage in the classroom will have, as any other child or adolescent, they will have mental health problems. So how do we recognize what are some of the signs that somebody may be having mental health problems? I suppose knowing the student as an individual is important, especially as dance teachers. I'm sure you see people many times over many years. They come to class when they're 4, they may leave when they're 16, 15. That's a lifetime. So knowing each one of them actually puts you in a very good position to understand and recognize differences in behavior, for example. They start arriving late. They start arriving late for class, for example. They start isolating from their friendship group. They may be hiding away, somehow going to the back. They may change the way they dress, for example, baggy clothing, or in other types of classes, you may see visible weight loss. You might see, for example, people covering up arms or other parts of their body, or because of hidden self-harm. And another thing you're able to notice is the language, either change in language or language they use which may be showing something going on there. For example, negative comments about their own shape and their weight, comparing themselves to others a lot, believing something is wrong with their appearance, saying things like, if I lost weight, I would dance better, being negative about themselves and about their abilities, not eating ever anything in front of others, for example, other things, being interested in what other people are eating, somehow seeing fluctuating weight, disclosing things like irregular periods or using supplements, and sometimes seeing their performance declining. All these things, they don't necessarily mean there's a problem, but there are little alarm bells somehow that should trigger some more thinking about something that might be going on. So what do we do then? Do dance teachers keep it to themselves? How long can you keep it to yourself, especially if there's something very visible? It's a very complex issue, and there are lots of people to communicate with and communicate the right way. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, but for example, there needs to be communication with students, with their parents, with permission, for example, with their schools, day schools, and sometimes with healthcare professionals. And you'll ask, is it my responsibility as a dance teacher? I suppose, again, this is part of the discussion. What is the role of the dance teacher in that? The good relationship with the parents is important. The ability to feel it's a safe subject to talk about. Obviously, if you have concerns, you've got to think, at what level are they? Are we talking about self-harm? Are we talking about a weight problem? So I suppose trust and keeping in mind there's a big group of people I may need to talk to if there is a problem. Now, the dance teachers themselves, you're all well, not all, many of them, your parents or brothers, sisters, children. You've got your own life circumstances. It's an incredibly difficult job because it is a stressful profession. I've spoken to lots of dance teachers. They do highlight things like working in isolation, spending, for example, 5-6 hours per day not seeing another adult, somehow working for various dance schools with different types of support and understanding of what's going on. Freelancing is a big thing, and finances, especially now. Challenges with parents or students, identifying a problem and wanting to talk about it doesn't mean it will be well received by the student's family or the student themselves. And then there is the big issue of confidentiality. When do we disclose things, especially if a student has confided something, has disclosed something to us? So starting to think, yes, there are lots of problems, but lots and lots of things can help. So what can help? When we say about whole dance school culture and approach, many times dance teachers don't work in isolation. They are part of a bigger group, either of a specific dance school, who many times hires people of the same type of somehow thinking, or a friendship group, or their own somehow what they bring with them as a person. So knowing how much the dance school culture can influence is important. For example, if the dance school promotes things like self-compassion, encourage it in the dance students and the teachers, building self-confidence to the students and the dance teachers, especially the younger ones, the ones who are starting now. Just to focus people on enjoying the process more and not to feel they're working in this very competitive environment where everything is about grades and competitions or exams or, things that take the joy of dance out of the day-to-day somehow life. Promoting things like self-respect and respecting others, encouraging self-care, to the including things like nutrition, sleep, enjoying dance, avoiding things like fat talk, somehow trying to discourage weight stigma, and thinking very much about how we speak about others. And I have to say, students listen to things, and sometimes because there's no space, teachers might talk to each other about kids or about other people in a way that the students pick up. And if it's a positive way of talking about others, the students will sort of copy that. Now, this is the second thing I'm writing about the dance teacher as a role model. Because even so, a dance teacher is very young, for example, 19, 20 years old. If they're dealing with kids who are 6 years old or 8 years old, they are a very influential role model. So how much the dance teacher looks after themselves, how much they look after their own well-being. They project the message it's important to be strong and healthy and not to be skinny somehow and somehow implying that skinny is good and skinny is positive, and this is where it's going. This is the thing that's going to get you to places. When you're tired as a dance teacher or hungry or so, just be very aware of what it causes to yourselves and your bodies. And then, for example, I suppose projecting the message that every dancer is beautiful, every dance student is beautiful, and see that beauty in yourself and others. The language we use in class, outside class, and the internal dialogue I just mentioned, how we talk about people most times reflects what we think of them. So being aware of our own internal dialogues, for example, seeing a child has put on weight, our reaction is up to us really, but being aware of the reaction is the first step. So it is important to remember things also about the absence of language when we don't talk to children, students. The fact that a child has put on weight, for example, I'm saying a child, I also include adolescents, and there are comments like, something doesn't look right, or you stop looking at them, you completely ignore them up to the point where they lose the weight, and then they start becoming the favorite student again. So yes, how do we use language? We can use it. It's a powerful tool. We can use it for emotional support. You can connect with people, make it clear you're worried about them. You can use language to somehow encourage mutual support, to communicate things like that. It's okay to struggle. It's okay not to learn everything quickly. It's okay not to take the exam this time. And obviously to be non-judgmental and communicate the joys of dance. Now, if there is a mental health problem, and there are mental health problems, we can't deny that, same way as there are physical health problems. I suppose it starts from ourselves, from our own way of thinking and how we see mental health. If we are able to communicate that having a mental health problem is not trivial, it's not a sign of weakness, it's not something that's just people's choice, and it's not because they haven't tried hard enough and they just can't it's not just, you just get over it. It's not an embarrassing thing talking about how people feel. We've got to understand that mental illnesses, they are causing significant difficulties in people's lives, and they need treatment. I suppose as a dance teacher, another an ideal situation would be if the dance teachers could recognize, identify somehow, when is it time to talk to a health professional? Is there a mental health problem that needs treatment? Who do I talk to? And again, I'm not going to go into this, but just an outline. There are lots out there to help. I know there are waiting times and it's not easy to somehow have access to services. But the first step is to know which services exist. So there are specific referral routes. GPs help a lot. Schools help a lot. They've got support systems. Some services people can self-refer, and that includes, for example, substance misuse or private care. But the GPs can help a lot, and for me, that would be the first port of call, really. If there's a crisis and emergency, again, they're very specific. They're NHS pathways, and then, if needed, people can see a community mental health team or psychiatrist. And there's a range of treatments. Usually, in these age groups, they are psychological interventions and social support. Very, very rarely medication, but psychological interventions can help a lot. So again, this confusion, does dance help or does it cause problems? No, dance helps. It doesn't cause problems itself coming to the dance class. Most times people come in with these problems. And the main thing is that there's been a lot of research confirming that dance can help. It improves people's emotional, social, psychological, and physical well-being, promotes self-expression, self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-motivation. It has a positive impact on quality of life, on well-being and body image, improves self-management, improves interpersonal skills, decreases depression and anxiety. And we really need to keep thinking about it as a really meaningful, valued, and enjoyed activity. It brings to people feelings of joy, satisfaction, social connectedness, and it gives a sense of pleasure. And most important, can lead to a sense of belonging. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks. Any questions? Happy to answer in the end.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for such a whirlwind tour through such a deep subject. I'm sure that there will be questions on specifics for people to ask in due course. Now I'd like to turn, please, to Will Centurion, who is or was a dancer, singer and actor, and may still be in certain circumstances. He retired from performing to focus on integrating his stage experience and knowledge of psychology to create mental health services that target the needs of performers. So take it away, Will.
Thank you so much, Imogen. Hi, everybody. My name is Will. I am a qualified counselor and mindset coach that focuses on working with dancers and people in creative industries. As a practitioner in Australia, now in the UK, I've developed resources such as the Rewire, Repair and Reboot workshop series, RTP, which is the Resilience Training Program for dancers, and the Teacher's Mental Health Toolkit, which is a toolkit designed to help teachers get on top of the mental health game, both for themselves and for their students. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share this space with you today and hope that by the end of this session, I can offer you some practical solutions that you can take into the studio to help improve the mental health of your studio culture. So I'm going to share my presentation and we can kick straight off without any further ado. There we go. So what I want to do is spend the next 5 minutes just chatting with you about how your use of language is fundamental in developing positive health in mental health in students. But before I do, it's probably really helpful to clarify what mental health is. So the old model of mental health looks at a top-down approach, meaning the way the brain impacts the body, whereas the new model of mental health looks at a bottom-up approach, meaning the way the body impacts the brain. So what we might want to do is to consider that emotional health is actually mental health, or the gateway to mental health. So when talking about things like anxiety, depression, and eating disorders, imposter syndrome, we're probably talking about coping styles that dancers have developed to bridge the gap between themselves and a loss of confidence, a loss of self-worth, a loss of self-esteem, and a loss of acceptance. As dance educators, if you can help to support the way a dancer feels about who they are, their position within the tribe, and their position within the industry in the foreseeable future, you are far more likely to see dancers who can handle adversity and dancers who have the skills to yield but not break. So to help you understand this a little bit better, I want to offer myself as an example. I started dancing at the age of 18. I didn't have a lot of support from my parents at all, and I had no knowledge of the industry whatsoever. So going into my dance course, I was met with a lot of negative reinforcement. That looked and sounded like comments such as, the odds of you making it are very, very slim. There's a lot of competition for somebody like you. I will never put you front center in a routine. You will never be partnered with a girl because you're too skinny and you make the girls look fat. And the way that you dance makes you stand out like a pair of dog's bollocks. Fortunately, that had a huge imprint on me and countless hours of therapy to just sort of shake all of that off. Luckily, at the same time, I had a lot of educators who offered me positive reinforcement. And the comments that I remember from them include things like, your potential is powerful. You're the only one who managed to do the step that way. Your love of learning sets a wonderful example for the team. And my most favorite was when a teacher said to me, I see your effort. So I'm happy to say that even with all of that, even with starting dancing at the age of 18 and even with only 3 years of training under my belt, I went on to have a very successful music theatre career, 20 years in fact, not only in Australia, but also abroad. So what I want to draw your attention to are just sort of 3 simple factors or 3 simple skills that you can use to apply in your own dance studio. And number 1 is to remember that your words matter. So when you think about the comments that you make, the way I like to look at it is almost like how it impacts on the student as kind of like a traffic light system. So comments such as, your dancing isn't strong enough for a male in this industry, is going to trigger a nervous system response in a student that is a red zone, and that means something like freeze or flop. The reason for that is that you've disconnected a student to a sense of hope or a sense of belonging. And in actual fact, you might end up creating some coping mechanisms like depression, self-harm, or suicide. When you use comments like, you're being outdanced by everybody else in the group, what you're doing, in fact, is triggering a nervous system response that is yellow. And that's going to put a student into a fight or flight scenario. That's going to create disconnections to control or trust, and outcomes or demonstrations like anxiety attacks or panic attacks. And finally, when you use feedback such as, learning how to recover from your mistakes might in actual fact be your greatest superpower, that's going to create a nervous system response that is green and allow a student to feel far more adaptable and far more in flow. What this does is help young dancers to feel as though they are connected to their authenticity and their courage. Step number 2 is to be aware of using absolutes. So statements like you must, you should, you have to are going to create a huge imprint on an emerging professional. And I believe that the greatest thing a dance teacher can do is to help an artist stay in their own lane and learn to use the strengths that they have rather than apologize for the strengths that they do not have. And finally, understand that delivering feedback is a skill and that it should be about the performance and not the performer. It should be time relevant and in context to the task. It should be about the individual wherever possible. And most importantly, it should be purposeful and not a source of power, and definitely not a source of punishment. So in summary, what I'd love to remind you today is that your words as a dance educator do shape the mental health of dancers, both on and off the stage. And if you can find a balance between empathy and discipline, you are helping to ensure that the next generation of dancers develop a healthier mindset and a longer lasting relationship to their art. Thank you very much for hearing me out, and I look forward to your questions at the end of this presentation.
Thank you, Will. That was amazing. Short and sweet and brilliant. Thank you very much. So now I'd like to round out our perspectives on mental health and dance with Maria Kolitsida, who is a PhD student studying self-harm in young dancers at the University in Birmingham in collaboration with One Dance UK. Maria, please could you introduce yourself more fully and share your presentation with us?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Imogen, for this introduction. So my name is Maria. My background is in psychology, and ever since my master's degree, I've been specializing in the field of suicide and self-harm. And this is how I came about to study self-harm in dance students at the University of Birmingham in collaboration with One Dance UK. So I will now share my presentation. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. So I wanted to start by saying that while my background is in psychology, it is important to note that unlike other people that have talked to you today in this webinar, I don't focus on treating people. I use my psychological skills and knowledge to really try and understand mental health and mental ill health in dance and try and understand how we can best support people. So before I actually begin my talk, I want to point out that obviously self-harm is a very emotive topic. So if it is something that you know might affect you negatively, please feel free to leave the webinar temporarily. This presentation will take roughly 5 to 7 minutes and then return after that and take care of yourselves. So there's been a massive increase in the amount of news we see about self-harm and self-harm in young people. And while there are many, many different definitions of what self-harm is out there, for the purposes of this presentation, I will be talking about self-harm as it occurs when people deliberately hurt themselves. So in line with what we've seen in the media about the increases in self-harm, dance teachers like yourselves have voiced concerns over the rising number of students who self-harm. And this is not surprising, as we know from research that the amount of young people who self-harm has been consistently increasing over the last few years. So as mental health researchers, it is really important to try and understand what actually is self-harm, how self-harm impacts people, what puts people at risk of self-harm, and how we can most effectively signpost people for support with their self-harm. However, offering support around self-harm to dance teachers like yourselves is a bit more complicated at the moment, and simply that's because we don't really have any research that looks into self-harm in dancers specifically. And this is where my project comes in. So my first point of action is to try and understand what self-harm is in dance. As I mentioned, there are many, many different definitions of self-harm out there. So what exactly do dance teachers mean when they say, well, we're noticing more and more self-harm in our classes? So to do that, I talk with dance teachers and try and really understand what it is they're worried about and how they're currently responding to self-harm in their students to really get an idea of what's currently happening. Then after that, the plan is to try and understand why dance teachers or dance students rather self-harm and what might put people at risk of self-harm. And finally, how we can best support these people to hopefully try and put together some evidence-based guidance or some evidence-based advice on how you yourselves can then help safeguard your dance students. So while we're unsure of how many of the things we know about the general public really translate into dance and into the dance settings, it would be useful for you to have some key facts about self-harm that we know from general public studies. So the first is self-harm is not uncommon. Around 6% of the population self-harm, and actually 1 in 5 females between the ages of 16 and 24 have had experiences with self-harm. We know that not everyone who self-harms actually thinks about killing themselves or about suicide, but for some, it may be a sign of this, and any talk of suicide within your dance studio should be taken very seriously, and you should follow your safeguarding procedures around this. Also, it is important to note that people self-harm in a variety of ways, and these may be different in dance. So in the general population, most people tend to self-harm by either cutting or scratching themselves, burning or hitting themselves, and taking too much or too little medication. But this, you can imagine, can be quite different in class, in dance class, where people have to sort of wear a leotard or a certain uniform that might make their self-harm more visible. So people might find more sort of covert ways of hurting themselves, and that's worth keeping in mind. And we're looking forward to learning a bit more about that through my research as well. And also people self-harm for a variety of reasons. And some of these are to control or regulate their emotions or to even punish themselves. But it is important that even between episodes of self-harm, those reasons could be different. So never assume that you know why a student has self-harmed. Finally, I wanted to give you some useful resources about what self-harm is so you can learn a bit more about that. It is so important to know that self-harm can vary massively from person to person. So it's very hard to give you specific advice on how to respond to self-harm in your students. But what's really helpful is to know a bit more about self-harm and the facts around this, because actually believing misinformation around self-harm increases feelings of guilt, shame, and fear in young people who self-harm. So I've put together these trustworthy resources and I've asked that they're sent to you so you can learn a bit more about self-harm. And finally, if you're interested in learning more about self-harm or you're interested in helping out with the research I'm currently doing around self-harm, please get in touch with me. I'm currently talking with dance teachers that work in private dance schools with students between the ages of 13 and 24. And yeah, if you want to learn more about that, if you would like to take part, please feel free to email me at mxk029@bham.ac.uk. And here it is in bigger letters. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thanks a lot. And Erin, thank you also for copying the links that Maria provided to everybody into the chat. So it's easy for everyone to copy and paste if anybody's interested in picking up those links straight away. We can also put those links on the Safer Dance website separately as well as an additional easy to click through resource for everyone. So at this point, we are moving into the question and Q&A session. So if you've been formulating some questions just now is a good time to put your questions into the Q&A so that we can pick that up. We do have 2 already, but just while I give you a few moments, we just wanted to flag the third in the series of Harnessing Your Voice sessions, which is to be about gender and diversity in the studio and that ongoing conversation that we all need to participate in. We have fixed on the 24th of May between 1 and 2 p.m. to meet again. And we are currently putting together the panel. So we will reach out to everyone who's attended either this session or the previous session, as well as all our other networks, to make sure everybody knows about that session. So moving on, I'm going to start with our first question. Sometimes in teen classes, and this is to all of you as a panel, and feel free to jump in if you are ready to answer. Sometimes in teens classes, before and after class, we usually write down 1 to 3 feelings. It's a hidden message without a name written on it. Nowadays, students are struggling much more about their external experience instead of the internal experience. And when do you think it is necessary to inform parents? So I'm interpreting here a little, but I'm assuming that as part of this process in your classes, you are writing down these feelings and you have noticed anecdotally that there appear to be a lot more messages about the external experience. And you would like some guidelines or a discussion about when you think it's a good point to reach out rather than just having this as a process to allow students to inform you or to air their concerns on the basis of it being better out than in. So I've interpreted that. Panel, do you have any comments that you would like to make to address that? Nicole?
First of all, it's a very good thing about the writing down the feelings. It sort of normalizes talking about feelings, especially as, I forgot to say that, in dance class, there is music, and music can evoke emotions many times and bring people back to bring memories. When to communicate, this is it's a very tricky one. First of all, there's no somehow cut-off point which is absolute. we definitely communicate concerns when there is risk, for example, of self-harm. When there are concerns about external appearance, we need to keep watchful waiting initially, especially if you know the student. Talk to the student, see how they feel about disclosing things. Try to understand, have they spoken to their parents about what they're experiencing, or are they sharing this in class? How safe do they feel to discuss with their parents? How comfortable do they feel to discuss with their parents? It's a three-way conversation, really. The dance teacher could somehow ask the parents as well. Do they think everything is all right? Do they think, have they noticed anything? And then almost like playing it by ear, unless there are concerns about risks. You don't want to harm the relationship with a student, but if there are concerns, it's not the dance student's job, let's say, to put it like this, to fix them. The parents need to get involved, because it may be an issue, it may be nothing, but it may be an issue that other people will need to be involved as well, including healthcare professionals or the school. So these were my initial thoughts.
You were saying it's an art, right, Nicole? Is finding that space, and there are potentially many routes, I think. Yes, Will, do jump in.
Yeah, so I think in terms of practical solutions, there's a couple of perspectives that I might consider. Number one is if the child's under 18, I would probably say that there's a duty of care protocol there that has to be followed. For anyone that is young and who you feel is at risk under the age of 18, I might sort of bypass, that uncomfortability and speak to the parents about some of the issues that you may be witnessing or some of the issues that you may have heard of. Another approach might be to start introducing some mental health resources into the studio, having some posters or some flyers around, maybe even inviting somebody to come in and sort of talk to the cohort or talk to the group about emotional health or mental health or any of the topics that you as a studio owner or a teacher might be noticing. Because I think if we can normalize the conversation, if we can normalize the experience, and if we can make students feel safe enough to be able to sort of express what's going on for them, then we can more rapidly find the answers. So that's my take on things.
And I think that there are safeguarding protocols that you can use in this situation, if I'm right, that you can follow in terms of if you see a change in the behavior of someone and that's alerting, then you can follow up using your safeguarding protocols in terms of engaging with a parent where they're under 18, engaging with an at-risk adult themselves and understanding that issue around consent and so on, and helping to signpost them. I would think that coming back to some of your presentation, that there's potentially some reflection on the part of the teacher in terms of modeling positive attitudes as well that we can be doing as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you sort of model having difficult conversations, that you model working with messages around mental health. Another thing I might also say is that as a studio owner or a dance teacher, it's your business and you also want to safeguard your business. So if there's any concerns that there are issues within your culture, I would err on the side of sort of doing something about it, because at the end of the day, what you would want to avoid is any kind of reputation that's going to have a huge impact on your livelihood. So, I think it's in the student's best interest and in the business owner's best interest to meet the issue where it's at.
If I can also add to that.
Maria, yeah, please do.
Very important that you do have that safeguarding protocol in place and you know at what point you pass on those concerns, because if you get to the point where your gut is telling you this is too much, I need to be passed that on to the parents, something a bit dodgy is happening here, then you definitely need to pass it on. But in order to essentially protect your relationship with your student, it is important for your dancers to know when you'll be passing on those concerns. So having a really clear, laid out safeguarding protocol of when you might talk to someone else then enables the student to know what's going to happen. And before you go on and raise those concerns with somebody else. Also let your student know so that they know what to expect, because there could be nothing worse than them coming to you and sharing something that is important to them and then going home and finding out that their parents know. I think it's quite important to maintain that open line of communication both ways, and that would also help maintain your relationship with that student and that trust.
Thank you, Maria. So interestingly, the second question I think also touches on this. So the question is, what can I do when I see a student in my class struggling, but I'm not the studio owner or the safeguarding lead in this scenario, and they, assuming the safeguarding, we're talking about the safeguarding lead here, they refuse to pass the information on. So I think, Maria, some of what you just said is the answer to that question in terms of setting out that, knowing what the protocols are and trying to ensure that they are robust and resilient, and that you test them, and that when they don't work, that you reflect and so on. But for a freelancer, of course, that's very difficult because you're not responsible necessarily for setting those safeguarding protocols. Although, as a freelancer, you do have absolute agency and choice in terms of what your principles are and how you engage on safeguarding with the people that you work with, but you're not necessarily that named person or able to access a parent, and you wouldn't want to undermine a relationship or damage anything else, and you need to behave professionally. There's a whole soup of considerations here. However, I think the answer to this is that if the studio has a safeguarding lead and they have a safeguarding protocol, then you follow it and you test it. And if you complete a cause for concern form or process, the safeguarding lead has a duty to act on it. Does anybody else have any other comments?
Yes, document everything on your side. So if you are concerned, there's probably a reason to be concerned. If you're raising that, even if it's not being acted upon, document it, because later on it might be acted upon, and you know that at the end of the day you've passed that message on, and it is your duty to pass that message on.
Yes.
And maybe make it clear as to, like, look at the studio's safeguarding procedures and lay out exactly why and where it says that it should be acted upon, so that the safeguarding lead is also clear on why you're concerned and what their procedure lays out, I think.
Yeah. I think also that every single one of us as a human being has a responsibility to protect people, children, adults, protect people from harm. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why Safer Dance exists, because we want to highlight that and give people confidence to feel that they can be protective and supportive and caring people themselves as individuals. I think whilst this is a potentially difficult space, if you feel that a peer or a colleague is around you is not supporting that process enough, or is maybe missing that responsibility, then you also have other channels that you can go down to try to protect that child. The needs of the child must be paramount. And whilst that might be tricky professionally, there is no reason why you would allow a child to stay at risk in order to preserve a professional relationship. So anybody can phone up their local council in this country, at least, and ask for help in this respect. And there will be a safeguarding officer who they will be able to talk to. Nicole.
And that includes, because I spoke earlier about the parents, but there are cases where there are concerns about the parents and the family environment.
Yeah. And Will?
Yeah, I just think it's really important to do what you can do with the power you have. And it's more, it's crucial to get the message across. It's crucial to be heard. Think of the circle of supporters being something that gets wider and wider. If you need to sort of step outside of the studio structure in order to get the message across, or in order to have your situation heard, then do what you do within the resources that are available for you. Yeah.
And or phone a friend to get advice. because we all have networks and we all have peers and mentors, hopefully, where we can help. And anybody on this call, if you have a problem and you don't know what to do, you can reach out to Safer Dance and one of us will help signpost you as well. So we're here in terms of this network to be supportive and to help spread that protective net throughout the profession with luck. Our final question, I think we have already answered. It's what can we do to help little students when they have visible signs of harm? There are safeguarding protocols and you have to follow them. With children, there are very specific protocols that are written out in keeping children safe in education and working together to keep people safe. And that is, you have to speak up. If you think that you need to protect them from their parents, then you have the choice to speak to your local safeguarding officer or directly to the police. If you see a child with visible signs, then you have to go first to the parents and you have to have that conversation, however difficult that is.
There is one more question, I think, on the chat. Sorry.
In the chat. Will, sorry, let me have a look in the chat, but you carry on and contribute, please do.
Yeah, I believe that, it's really important to just protect yourself and to protect the people around you, to sort of do the best that you can. I think it's really important to have any information be heard. And particularly when it comes to little ones, I think the more that you can reinforce that the studio is a safe space, that the culture is a safe space, that the tribe is a safe space, and that all your parts are welcome, not just the confident parts, but the vulnerable parts, the fearful parts. All your parts are welcome here. The more that kind of talk happens, the more that students, dancers, old or young, will feel enough in sort of a green nervous system zone to want to have a tough conversation or to want to share what's going on for them in their life.
Yeah, thank you, Will. The question, we have one more question in the chat. Why is the research focused? And I think this is addressed to you, Maria. Why is the research focused on private dance schools? I work in an FE college and we have self-harming dance students. So I'll just hand that over to you directly.
Yes, very good question. It was something that took us a while to decide on. And it is important to note that people can self-harm any age, at any professional stage, at any stage of their dance career or any stage of their life, really. And it is a bigger issue than private dance schools. But we also know from research around self-harm outside of dance that the context in which the self-harm occurs is really important, right? So dance is so variable and diverse. It happens in so many different places. So for us, it was really important to pinpoint a setting where we could get the research started and actually have something that's a bit more like manageable and a chunk of the dance sector, as opposed to saying, okay, everybody from private dance schools, from professionals, because then we would really like muddy up the water, if that makes sense. That doesn't mean that people who are in college don't self-harm, or dance teachers who work in colleges don't need support to support their students who self-harm. Definitely. But we decided to go down the grassroots route and look at private dance schools, because oftentimes the safeguarding procedures and the support available to private dance teachers is a lot more limited to state-funded schools or vocational schools, and that's ultimately how we made that decision. But yeah, I can understand why self-harm would be an issue beyond that. Yeah, thank you.
That's great, Maria. Thank you very much. So we are 2 minutes over time, which I think, frankly, thank you, panelists, is amazing, because we covered so much work and so much thinking. And I, for myself, am definitely going to take a few days to reflect on this and just to process all of that. Thank you very much for your time and for your wisdom and for your gift of this recorded session into the Safer Dance Resources website.